Detective Elara Miles stepped through the open doorway of the house on Hadrian Street, and immediately her skin tightened. The atmosphere inside didn't feel right. It wasn't the smell or the sight of the body those were expected. It was the weight of the silence that wrapped itself around her like a heavy, suffocating fog. That everything was to clean. The house belonged to Richard Clements, tech mogul, inventor, recluse, the kind of man who was either hailed as a genius or feared as a god, depending on whom you asked. His fortune was rooted in silent surveillance technologies, voice-stealing mics, biometric locks that whispered instead of clicked. Now he lay dead in the very home designed to protect him. Elara moved cautiously into the living room. The body was arranged neatly on the couch, almost as if Clements had fallen asleep while reading, except there was no book, and his eyes were wide open, widened by surprise or fear. There were no signs of struggle. No bruises, no blood, no shattered glass or overturned tables. His smartwatch was still strapped to his wrist, flashing its usual vitals except one. Heartbeat, 0. Elara crouched beside the body, her gloved fingers reaching out to tilt his chin. His skin was cool, but not stiff. Recently dead. And yet, ... His expression was calm. Calm. Detective Elara was no stranger to murder. But something about the entire room whispered wrongness. She stood and took a slow, deliberate walk around the perimeter of the living room. Everything was meticulously arranged. The cushions were fluffed, the coffee table spotless. A single orchid in a marble vase stood at the center, its white petals so pristine they looked artificial. "Who's the first responder?" she asked aloud. A voice behind her answered. "That would be me, ma'am." Officer Lee stepped forward, holding a digital notepad. His eyes were slightly bloodshot, but his posture was rigid. "Neighbor reported no movement for 3 days. Said that was unusual. We knocked. No answer. Smart system let us in when we triggered the safety override." Override? Elara raised an eyebrow. Apparently, Clements designed it to unlock if it detected silence for over 72 hours. As a failsafe, Elara looked back at the body. Smart paranoia. "Yes, ma'am." "Any signs of forced entry?" "None." Cameras went dark roughly 4 hours before the system triggered the override. Elara turned sharply. "You're telling me the surveillance system designed by Richard Clements failed 4 hours before he was found dead?" Lee nodded grimly. "There's no sign of a virus or a hack. It just ... stopped recording, like someone hit mute on the entire house." She walked into the hallway and accessed the security hub, a wall-mounted panel with encrypted controls. It blinked, welcoming her with sterile efficiency. "Welcome, guest investigator. Access level, temporary. Code 9 clearance." She scrolled through the logs. Everything looked normal, at least until 2:03 a.m. 3 nights ago. Then nothing. No alerts, no motion detected, no door access, no audio pickup. No exit logs either. Whoever came in, if anyone did, never left, or the system never saw them. A perfect vacuum of data. Elara's heart thudded softly. This wasn't just a clean crime scene. It was sterilized, neutralized, almost ... erased. For a fleeting moment, the sterile silence reminded Elara of another room, one she had locked away deep inside her memory. A hospital room. Years ago, her brother lay in a coma, no machines beeping, no voices, just the constant hum of forced quiet. The day he slipped away, the nurse forgot to close the window, and she remembered the birds outside chirping in contrast to the unbearable hush inside. It was the same kind of silence now, something not empty, but stolen. "Where's the coroner?" she asked. "On the way, 20 minutes out." Bag his smartwatch and scan the vitals history. "I want to know the exact second his heart stopped." "Yes, ma'am." She stepped into the adjoining room, a sleek kitchen, all brushed steel, and seamless counters. Even here, nothing was out of place, until she noticed a faint, smeared fingerprint on the fridge handle. She examined it. No full print, just a partial, fresh. But every surface in this home was coated in an anti-oil smudge-resistant film, the kind that actively repelled fingerprints. Someone had touched that fridge after disabling the security, on purpose. A message. She pulled up the smart fridge's internal camera log. Most smart appliances recorded usage data and even internal views. Last open time, 2:06 a.m. 3 nights ago. She opened the fridge slowly. Inside, among protein bars, energy drinks, and tightly labeled containers sat something completely out of place. A small red origami crane, folded perfectly, perched on the middle shelf. Elara stared at it for a long moment. Not food, not trash, deliberate. She bagged it. Detective Miles. Elara turned. A tall woman in a charcoal grey suit stood at the doorway. Her face was pale but composed. Tessa Morgan. I was Mr. Clemens' personal assistant. Elara nodded. You find the body? No. I was on remote leave, but I received a silence alert this morning and checked in. Tell me something. Would anyone have had access to override his surveillance tech? Tessa hesitated. Only him, or someone who knew his... Habits. He didn't believe in randomness. Every password, every pattern based on personal rhythm, music, piano keys, metronomes. Elara blinked. Meaning, if someone wanted in, they needed to know him. Elara sat alone in the silent room, what the house's blueprints called the central node. There were no windows, just matte black walls, a desk, and a suspended display screen that hovered like a ghost above the floor. The screen blinked to life as she activated the audio logs. All blank, except one, a voice recording, time-stamped, 2:08 a.m., 3 nights ago. She hit play. For 10 seconds. There was nothing. Then, a breath, soft, deliberate. Then silence again. But, under the silence, if you strained hard enough, was a click. A single piano key, C-sharp. Elara stood, suddenly cold. Whoever had killed Richard Clemens hadn't just avoided detection. They had composed the scene, like a symphony, a silent one. The rain came down in grey sheets, washing the edges off the world. Detective Elara Miles sat in her parked car outside an old converted warehouse in the city's forgotten district. The structure loomed like a stubborn memory, defiant against the gentrification swallowing the rest of the skyline. Inside lived Talia Wynn, artist, recluse, and the last person seen on security footage, walking past Richard Clemens' property the night he died. Not entering, not leaving, just ... walking ... in silence. Elara stepped out of the car and braced her coat against the wind. Her boots echoed against the wet concrete as she approached the warehouse door. She pressed the buzzer, half expecting nothing, but a low, mechanical whir buzzed back, and the steel slab slid open. Warm light spilled out. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of oil paints and turpentine. Talia stood waiting, small, bird-like, no more than 5'2". Her brown curls fell like a messy halo around wide, dark eyes. She wore a long smock splattered with dried color, her bare feet silent on the concrete floor. Elara was struck by how young she looked up close, barely in her 20s. Talia said nothing. Of course, Elara reminded herself, she couldn't. Miss Wynn, Elara began, voice calm. I'm Detective Elara Miles. I need to ask you some questions. Talia nodded slowly. She turned and gestured for Elara to follow. The warehouse had been transformed into a painter's sanctuary. Enormous canvases leaned against the walls. Most turned away. In the center of the space, under a ring of amber spotlights, stood a single easel, a new painting, fresh. It wasn't finished. Elara took in the image, a shadowed figure on a couch. No face. The background abstract, but unmistakably modern. Marble floors, glass walls. Richard's living room. You painted this now? Elara asked. Talia nodded. Double quotes. How do you know what the crime scene looked like? The girl stared at her, then walked across the room to a nearby table. She opened a drawer and pulled out a slim black tablet. She typed quickly. I didn't see the body. I felt it. Elara stared at the words. What do you mean? You felt it. Talia typed again. Sometimes I see things in silence. I can't explain. I walk near places, and they show me things. Elara leaned back, crossing her arms. That's not exactly admissible. Talia's fingers flew across the screen again. I don't care if it's admissible. I saw him 3 nights ago, on the couch, not moving. I knew he was gone. Elara narrowed her eyes. Why didn't you call anyone? Talia paused, then typed. People don't listen to voices they can't hear. Elara gestured toward the unfinished painting. What's missing? Talia tapped her chin, then typed. His hands. I haven't seen them yet. Seen them? Elara asked, puzzled. Talia didn't respond. Instead, she turned to the canvas again. Her brush moved in sharp, precise strokes. She painted the hand, clenched, not reaching, just resting. And in one palm, a small red shape. Elara froze. It was the origami crane. How did you know about that? She asked sharply. Talia turned, typed, I didn't. Not until now. Elara felt a chill crawl up her spine. Either this girl was playing a dangerously clever game or she was tuned into something far more disturbing. Back at HYOH, Elara laid out the pieces. A psychic mute artist painting crime scenes she shouldn't know about. A dead billionaire whose security system blacked out with surgical precision. And now, a red origami crane appearing in both reality and paint. None of it makes sense, she muttered. Forensics came in with preliminary reports. No foreign DNA on the crane. No fingerprints. The partial smudge on the fridge. Inconclusive. It didn't match any known profile. Even worse, Richard's smartwatch had auto-wiped most of its vitals history. Just the last 20 seconds remained. No spike in heart rate. No sign of distress. Could it be poison? She asked aloud. Could be, said Dr. Juno, the forensics chief. But no trace of toxins yet. It's like he died, peacefully. Without a reason. Elara frowned. There's always a reason. That night, she returned to Talia's warehouse with a court-approved digital sketchpad. She handed it to Talia. I want you to try something. Go back in your mind. Try to walk past the house again. Tell me what you saw. Paint it. Talia stared at the blank screen for a long time. Then she began to draw. Her fingers moved rapidly. Elara watched as a corridor appeared, clean, silent. Then two figures, one tall, cloaked in darkness. The other, Richard, reaching out. But there was no face on the intruder. Talia drew something else. A shape above the couch. A shadow, not a person. A presence. What is that? Elara asked. Talia typed, I don't know. But it was watching. Later that night, Elara sat alone. In her apartment, reviewing the sketches. Her logical mind rebelled against it all. None of it fit the mold of a clean homicide investigation. But her instincts, they whispered otherwise. She remembered the way the room felt. The silence, the crane, the camera blackouts, the presence, and Talia, painting truths no one had told her. What if this wasn't just a murder? What if it was a message? There was a ticking in Elara Miles' mind that wouldn't stop, a silent metronome, keeping rhythm with every unanswered question. Every time she tried to rest, her brain replayed the image of Richard Clemens' eyes open, body still. No cause of death, no struggle, no suspect. A perfect mystery. A hollow void where a narrative should have been. Now she stood in the forensic psychology wing of the Metropolitan Criminal Intelligence Division, staring through a one-way mirror. On the other side of the glass, Dr. Callum Sorrell. He sat with perfect posture, hands folded, legs crossed, calm, watching something on a small tablet. Notes, likely, or maybe nothing at all. Elara had read his file 3 times before agreeing to meet him. Former FBI profiler, consultant to Interpol, specialist in rare behavioral anomalies, genius, some said, sociopath, others whispered. But if anyone could build a psychological profile of a killer who left no evidence, it was him. She entered the room. He stood. Detective Miles, he said. His voice was low, steady, and British educated. I've been waiting. Elara nodded curtly. Dr. Sorrell, thanks for agreeing to consult. Of course, he said. I read about Clemens. Fascinating case. Fascinating isn't the word I'd use. And yet, you can't let it go. Elara frowned. Excuse me. He tapped the side of his head. Your eyes betray your heartbeat. You haven't slept. You're cycling thoughts. You want answers not because you need them, but because silence terrifies you. She narrowed her gaze. You always diagnose people in the first minute. He smiled faintly, only when invited. They moved to the caseboard. Sorrell studied the photographs. Richard's body, the red crane, the untouched scene. This, he said, isn't just a murder. It's a performance. Elara leaned in. Explain. The way the body is placed, the lack of evidence, the symbolic object and origami crane. This isn't about erasing the crime. It's about composing it. A killer who wants the world to know something, without saying it. And what do they want us to know? Sorrell tilted his head. That they're better than us. Elara felt that chill again. He continued. This is someone who understands systems, digital, psychological, human. Someone who can anticipate reactions, like a chess grandmaster thinking 20 moves ahead. So what does that make us? Sorrell turned to her. Expression neutral. Pawns. The day wore on. Elara reviewed case files with Sorrell, bouncing theories, but his answers always circled around one idea: control. The killer needs control, he said. Even the absence of data is part of the design. She slammed a folder shut. But why Clemens? Clemens made enemies, Sorrel said. But the method suggests personal knowledge, or obsession. Obsession, Elara repeated. The word echoed. It was what she was becoming, wasn't it? Late that night, she returned to the silent room. Alone, the darkness was absolute, but she didn't turn on the lights. Instead, she sat where Clemens died. She closed her eyes, tried to imagine the killer, the movements, the silence, the exit. Was it someone he knew? Someone he let in? Was the killer still in the house when the surveillance shut off? Her heart raced. She saw flashes in her mind: Talia's faceless figure, the painted shadow watching from above. A ghost. She snapped her eyes open. There was nothing there, and yet she felt watched. Sorrel called her the next morning. I found something in the pattern, he said. He brought her to the data room. Spread across 6 monitors were sound graphs. These are audio spikes from inside the house. Nothing unusual until you look at the navens. He pointed to gaps, periods of calculated silence. Someone edited the sound. No, he said. Someone designed silence into the event. There were cues to mask presence. Someone trained in sound design. Elara stared at him. You think it was choreographed? He nodded. The killer used white noise frequencies to blur motion. They didn't erase evidence. They never left it. So what are you saying? She snapped. We're hunting a ghost with a PhD in sound theory. Sorrel folded his arms. We're hunting a composer. A mind that sees silence as a medium. She turned away, fists clenched. This case is eating you, he said softly. No, she replied. It's consuming something else. He tilted his head. What? She met his eyes. My certainty. That evening, a package arrived at HQ. No return address. No postage. Inside, a single vinyl record. Blank label. No title. Elara and Sorrel played it. At first nothing. Then, the sound of breathing. Faint, rhythmic. A single piano key struck. C-sharp. Then silence. Then a whisper. She knows. The morning air was brittle with cold. Elara Miles stood outside the sprawling high-security compound of Clemens Technologies, an empire of steel and glass. The building looked like it had been sliced from the future and dropped onto the city block. 10 stories of reflective obsidian panels, tinted so dark they absorbed light and truth alike. It was a fortress masquerading as an office, and it was the next battlefield in her war against silence. Inside, the mood was antiseptic. No one smiled, no one greeted her. Security escorted her to a glass-walled conference room where 3 board members waited, seated like statues carved from money and protocol. They didn't stand. Detective Miles, said the man in the center, Anders, acting CEO. We've already complied with your data requests. What more do you need? Answers, Elara replied, placing her tablet on the glass table. Not algorithms. Richard's death is tragic, said the woman to V. Left, voice clipped. But dragging this company through an extended investigation will affect global partnerships. That sounds like obstruction, Elara said. It's caution, Velin replied smoothly. We're protecting shareholder interests. You mean hiding something, Elara muttered. Excuse me. She leaned forward. Tell me about Project Reverence. All 3 executives stiffened. She'd only found the name because of Harper. Her old partner had buried it in the system. Behind layers of access Elara shouldn't have been able to breach, but she had. And what she found infuriated her. Project Reverence was a joint psychological data experiment between Clemens Tech and a military think tank, built on adaptive surveillance and emotional response tracking. In short, technology that watched you feel, and Richard Clemens had tested it on employees, on clients, on himself. The board offered nothing. Velin folded his arms. That's classified. Even in death, Clemens' projects remain proprietary. Elara stood. Then consider this your official notice. I'm seizing your R&D servers under criminal suspicion. If you block it, you'll be obstructing a homicide investigation. She left them fuming. Back in her car, Elara clenched the steering wheel. Her jaw hurt from grinding her teeth. Harper had known. He'd seen the Reverence files, tagged them, and buried them. It wasn't the first time he'd kept things from her. But this crossed a line. She dialed. He answered. Didn't expect to hear from you so soon, Harper said, his tone teasing. Cut the crap, she said. You lied to me. Silence. Found the Reverence file. You buried it. Another pause. Then, you weren't cleared. You think I care about clearance when a man is dead and his tech might have helped kill him? Elara, I was protecting you. Reverence isn't just another prototype. It's black box intelligence. People don't just disappear over it. They get erased. You had no right. You have no idea what you're walking into. Then explain it to me. More silence, don't. Then Harper whispered, meet me, off the grid. Warehouse 17, midnight. The line went dead. That afternoon, she returned to HQ to find her desk had been moved. No explanation, no note. Files she'd left open were closed and locked. A new officer sat at the desk beside hers. A stranger. Who are you? She asked. Officer Cade, he said. Reassignment. Who approved it? Your superior. She marched to Captain Rennick's office. Did you move my files? She demanded. He looked up slowly. What are you accusing me of, Elara? Someone's been watching my investigation. We're all watching it. You're dancing near restricted intel. If I don't have eyes on you, someone else will. She narrowed her gaze. Who? Doesn't matter. You need to decide if you're solving a murder or digging a grave. Yours. Warehouse 17 was a shadow in the industrial district. At midnight. Harper was already inside, pacing like a man being hunted. You brought a tail, he asked. No, she growled. But I brought rage. He smiled sadly. You always did. Start talking. He handed her a flash drive. Everything I know about Reverence. Clemens built it to decode the human mind through emotion. But it started, ... Listening back. Elara blinked. What do you mean it evolved? Self-adapting surveillance. Like an AI tuned to empathy, but twisted. It didn't just learn what people felt. It learned how to control those feelings. How to silence them. Permanently. She took a step back. Richard tested it on himself. I think he triggered a feedback loop, meaning, he killed himself. Or, ... it killed him. Elara staggered back to her apartment after midnight, clutching the flash drive. She didn't plug it in. Instead, she sat in darkness, heart racing. If this was true, then the murder wasn't a murder. It was a message, or a warning, or a trial run. She closed her eyes, but couldn't stop imagining it. A technology that could make you feel so numb, so calm, that your heart simply stopped. No struggle, no pain. Just ... silence. The house on Hadrian Street hadn't changed. At least, that's what the official log said. But Elara Miles knew better. She stood just inside the glass threshold, staring across the pristine marble floor. 3 nights had passed since Richard Clemens' body had been removed, the evidence bagged, the crime scene processed, the room sealed. And yet, she felt it like a wrong note in a perfect song. Something had shifted. Elara stepped slowly into the living room, the heels of her boots echoing with surgical precision. She didn't turn on the lights. Instead, she let the natural grey light filter through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting pale shadows across the white furniture. The couch where Clemens had died looked untouched, its cushions stiff and obedient, but the air felt heavier, different, as if the room had tried to heal, but failed. She crouched beside the sofa, staring at the indentation his body had left. It was barely noticeable now, but it was there, a slight sink, a memory in the fabric, and she hated it, because the room remembered something, just not what mattered. She exhaled shakily, and whispered, "What did you see?" The room said nothing. She'd come alone, against protocol, against logic, no backup, no warrant, just an access override she hadn't returned yet. No one at HQ knew. She needed to be here without the noise, without the expectations, without Sorrel's clinical dissection of every word she said. She moved toward the art wall. 7 abstract canvases, stark colors, bold shapes. One had moved, slightly, barely, but she had memorized the placement after her first walkthrough. This one, the second from the left, had been perfectly centered above the accent table. Now it hung 1 inch too far. Right, her breath caught. She reached out slowly, lifting it off the wall. Nothing behind it. No safe, no sensor. Just a smear. A faint trace of oil from human fingers. Fresh Ilara's pulse spiked. She walked through the room with growing urgency now. The orchid vase had rotated slightly. The petals now faced west, not north. The chair in the reading alcove had shifted a few inches. The lighting had dimmed by 3 degrees from the previous baseline. Someone had been here. Someone had come back, or had never left. Her hand moved to her weapon instinctively, but the room remained still. unthreatening, empty. And yet the air pushed in around her, pressing like invisible fingers. She blinked, and suddenly, she was somewhere else. A hospital corridor. The smell of antiseptic and resignation. Her brother's room had been just as quiet, just as clean, just as devoid of answers. She'd sat beside him for hours, days, waiting for a change that never came, talking to a person who couldn't respond, watching monitors that stopped beeping, watching nurses who stopped hoping that it was the same helplessness, the same nothingness. She had failed him, just like she was failing Richard. A noise snapped her back, barely audible, a mechanical chirp. She turned sharply. It had come from the smart fridge. She approached slowly, her shadow stretching ahead of her. The screen blinked. Fridge access. 12 minutes ago. Her heart nearly stopped. No one was supposed to be here, not even her. She opened the door slowly. The food was untouched, except the origami crane was gone. In its place, a new one blew, and this one had a note tucked inside its wings. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. Inside, in precise typed print, "Silence is a choice. You're making noise." She turned in a full circle, breath coming short. Had she tripped a sensor? Was someone in the house now? She pulled her gun and swept the perimeter. Nothing. No sound. Just her. Just the house. Just the quiet. She sat on the edge of the same couch. Her hands trembled, but not from fear, from exhaustion. The house was a mirror now, a perfectly curated reflection of her unraveling mind. Each shift, each silence, each faint movement, a reminder that nothing here would give her closure, because this room remembered nothing, because whoever had done this had taken the memory. Her phone buzzed. A message from Sorrel. "Don't go back to the house. If you're there, leave. Now." Too late. She turned toward the main entrance. The lock had re-engaged. She hadn't heard it. The control panel now blinked red. Manual override engaged. Doors locked. She tried the control pad. No response. She was alone, trapped in a room that never screamed, that never spoke, and yet somehow knew everything. Elara stood beside Dr. Juno in the sterile depths of the forensic lab, heart thudding beneath her coat. Under harsh white light, Richard Clement's final blood panel was displayed on the screen, and for the first time in days, something was wrong. Enough to be right. Dr. Juno pointed to the anomaly. There, nanogram traces of compound V4X3 beta. "What is it?" Elara asked. "A custom neurotoxin, almost undetectable. Causes systemic shutdown without physical trauma. Engineered to mimic a natural death. Can it be administered without injection?" Juno nodded grimly. "Aerosol, inhalation, possibly transdermal with the right carrier." Stared at the screen. "This wasn't suicide." "No," Juno said. "It was an execution. The pieces weren't coming together. They were collapsing inward. A manufactured toxin. No known origin. No entry. No fingerprints. Only the echo of a breath and a single piano note. And the killer had left no tray, except the toxin inside the victim's blood. Like a whisper beneath the skin. Someone had designed this to erase presence. Someone with surgical precision, with access to tools outside the reach of most governments. And they'd made a mistake, they'd assumed. No one would look this deep, but Elara had, and now she was sure. This wasn't just about Richard, it was a test run. Elara returned to Talia, warehouse. The smell of linseed oil and charcoal hung heavy in the air. Talia didn't look up as Elara approached. She was painting again. This time it was darker. A figure stood in the middle of the silent room, the walls distorted, warped like heat waves. The man had no face, just smooth skin where features should be. Elara's voice caught in her throat. Talia finally looked up, typed on her tablet. "He was inside when Richard died." Watching Elara swallowed. "And you saw this?" How Talia typed. "I didn't. The room told me." "Are you saying the room has memory?" Talia nodded. "Not like us, but it keeps echoes." Elara glanced back at the painting. Her own silhouette had begun to take shape. Near the background, watching the faceless man the next morning, Elara awoke at her apartment with no memory of having gone to bed. Her coat was on the floor, boots muddied, and her service pistol moved from the drawer. She checked the barrel. One round missing. A cold sweat ran down her back. Had she fired it? Where? Why didn't she remember? She staggered to the bathroom, written in condensation on the mirror. "Noise kills. Stay still." She collapsed to the floor, trembling. At HQ. She ran a search on compound V4X3 beta only. One organization had the biochemical imprint, Clemens Technologies. She cross-referenced internal projects. Reverence. The toxin had been developed as a behavioral compliance tool, not for war, but for peacekeeping, crowd suppression, political neutrality enforcement. It had never been approved because it worked too well. Elara leaned back. She remembered Sorrel's words. You're not solving a murder, you're chasing the composer. But now she saw the truth. She wasn't just chasing him, she might have already met him. Dr. Callum Sorrel sat in his office, fingers steepled beneath his chin. He didn't flinch when Elara entered, door swinging wide. You lied to me, she said flatly. His gaze didn't waver. I withheld. There's a difference. You knew about the toxin, Reverence. You knew it wasn't just a surveillance tool. I suspected, he replied. But suspicion and proof are miles apart. She dropped the flash drive on his desk. Here's your proof. He picked it up, turned it between his fingers like it was weightless. You think I'm the composer? He said finally. Maybe, she said. Or maybe you're just writing his notes. Sorrel gestured to the whiteboard behind him. On it were drawings, psychological profiles, handwriting analysis, graphs of emotional decay. At the center, a symbol. The origami crane. I've been tracing behavior loops, he said. This killer doesn't erase because he hates detection. He does it because he needs control. He turned to face her fully. Think about it. The crime scene, the timing, the toxin, the messages. It's all theater. A simulation. Elara said nothing. He's not a killer. He's an architect, and his buildings are made of people. She stepped closer. You're talking about him, like you admire him. Sorrel paused. I understand him. That's not comforting. He leaned forward. You've been inside the house, alone, more than once. What did you feel? She opened her mouth, stopped. She couldn't answer, because what she had felt was indescribable. It wasn't fear. It was anticipation. As if something was waiting. An urgent call broke the tension. Another body, same toxin, same calm posture, same clean scene. This time, a retired government tech liaison. No enemies, no family, no clues, except one, a red origami crane, placed beneath a white pillow, and a message, typed and folded into its wings. She keeps looking, so I keep composing. Elara nearly dropped the paper. This wasn't just about Richard anymore. This was about her, back at her desk. She sifted through the patterns. Every victim so far had a thread silent ties to Clemens Technologies. Engineers, advisors, quiet, consultants, all of them had touched Reverence. All of them were being silenced. Sorrel walked in without knocking. Whoever this is, he said softly, he's watching you, watch him. Elara met his gaze, and he's enjoying the silence. It was the way the curtains swayed that told her something was wrong. Elara Miles stood in the doorway of the second apartment. Another body, another room, same toxin, same eerie peace. She stared at the couch where Jonah Reed's a quiet systems analyst once contracted to Clemens Technologies, lay perfectly still, arms folded, legs slightly parted. It was a mirror image of Richard Clemens' death, down to the temperature of the room, down to the type of tea on the side table. Only this time, there was something new. The walls were covered in paper cranes, hundreds of them, folded with obsessive precision, hanging from fishing lines, balanced on bookshelves, dangling from ceiling vents. And every one of them was red. Jesus, muttered Officer Torres, stepping into the room behind her. Elara didn't speak. Her mind was already moving, scrambling for logic where there was none. She turned to the tech team. Pull surveillance footage. Every device, every neighbor. Satellite overlays. I want eyes on every square meter around this building for the last 72 hours. The forensics lead, Jules, approached with latex gloves and a grim expression. You're not going to like this. Tell me. Same toxin, same lack of fingerprints. But this time, the only entry point was a ventilation port on the roof, barely wide enough for a hand. Elara felt her stomach twist. A message. The killer wasn't just copying the murder, he was refining it an hour later. She stood in the mobile command van reviewing exterior camera footage. Most of it was clean to clean until she spotted it. Frame 9443, a figure, moving along the rooftop, head to toe in black, gloves with mirrored fingertips, no face visible. The light bent around them like their silhouette didn't belong. Torres rewound the footage. slowed it enhanced. The figure paused beside the ventilation shaft, then raised a hand. Waved at the camera, like they knew, like they wanted to be seen. Elara returned to her apartment that night with her sidearm drawn, not because she had reason, but because she felt it. Wrongness. Her coat on the wrong hook. A cup moved 2 inches left on the counter, and on her bed, a single origami. Crane. Blue. She picked it up with tweezers. Inside, a new message. We're inside your noise now. You're the second room. She packed a bag in minutes. Laptop. Flash drive. Case files. Weapon. And she drove, not to HQ, not to any place with a badge, but to Talia Wynne, the only person who might understand what this meant. The artist met her at the warehouse door, as if she'd known she was coming. No words, just that eerie calm. Talia typed quickly on her tablet. They're escalating. You're part of it now. Who are they? Elara snapped. Talia turned the tablet. Not who, what? Elara dropped the paper crane on the table. Did you see this? Talia didn't answer. She walked to the canvas, began painting again. Within minutes, a new image appeared. Elara's apartment, her couch, her bed, and above it a shape, indistinct, watching. Talia typed, it's not just the room that holds memory, it's the silence inside you. That's what they're playing. Elara's voice cracked. Are you saying I'm next? Talia looked at her, eyes wide, terrified, and then, slowly, she nodded. At Elara didn't sleep. She sat with Sorrel at dawn, red-eyed, jittery. 2 victims, same scene, same signature, she said. They're forming a pattern, a ritual. Sorrel leaned back. He's building a composition. Each murder is a movement, a theme, but now he's added an audience. She looked up. Me. He nodded. You're the crescendo. She shook her head. I need to get ahead. We need to profile him, just psychologically, logistically. What does he need to do this? Sorrel listed them aloud. Access to toxins, deep knowledge of surveillance systems, psychological warfare tactics, and time. So much time, Elara added. And he's not working alone. He's too perfect. At HQ, a hit finally came through. A facial match from 8 years ago. Not a criminal, not a soldier, a composer, literal. Emil Drex, disgraced audio technician, once worked on black-budget military sound programs, then vanished after a psychotic break following a failed demo. Officially dead. Unofficially missing. Elara stared at his photo. Hollow eyes, long fingers. A man used to listening more than speaking. And next to his name, his old project file, Cody name, Silence Architect. Talia didn't speak when Elara arrived. She simply pointed to the painting. This time, it was massive, spanning the entire warehouse wall. Layers of color, crossed brushstrokes, a swirling vortex of abstraction. But in the center was something unmistakable, the silent room, rendered with near-perfect accuracy. Down to the wall textures, the placement of shadows, and in the corner of the painted floor, a square, slightly darker than the rest. A hatch. Elara stepped back. That's not in the floor plan, she whispered. Talia held up her tablet. He hid it under the rug. Beneath 2 boards. Elara's voice was thin. How do you know this? Because I've been dreaming about it since he died. That night, Elara returned to the silent room. She didn't tell HQ, didn't tell Sorrel. She pulled the rug aside, tapped the floor with her knuckles until she found the hollow tone, pried up to boards. There it was, a metal hatch, built seamlessly into the foundation. She opened it, a narrow stairwell leading down. No lights, just darkness and a sudden thick humidity like the breath of something waiting. She descended. The basement was small, no wider than a prison cell. Inside, shelves. Hundreds of tapes, handwritten notes, recordings, and in the center, a chair, strapped to a VR headset, electrodes, wires, an interface port. Elara turned on the desk lamp. The label on the first tape, subject number 12, final session. She played it. Richard's voice echoed from the speaker. Calm, steady, almost hypnotized. The room is listening. I think I'm changing. The silence is inside me now. He paused. I dreamed of her again. She's in the room. She's always watching. I think she's next. Elara nearly dropped the tape. Her. He was talking about her. She watched 3 more tapes. All described similar dreams. A faceless man. A second room. A woman with eyes that didn't blink. The subject, Richard, grew more paranoid. more detached. In the last video, he looks into the camera. If anyone finds this, don't trust the psychologist. His voice cracked. He was never here to help me. He's part of it. He started it. Elara's stomach turned cold. There was only one psychologist involved in the case. Dr. Callum Sorrell, ****, Elara, ran the search herself. Every database, every file, every fingerprint Sorrell had left, and found nothing. No school records, no birth certificate, no employment trail before 7 years ago. The degrees were real, but the timelines weren't. Every paper he'd published had one co-author in common, Richard Clemens. Every project he'd worked on, tied to military psychological research. There was no Dr. Callum Sorrell before Project Reverence. Because he didn't exist until they made him. She stormed into his office. Empty desk. Cleared computer hard drive removed. She called his number. Disconnected. She went to his apartment. Vacant. Neighbors said they'd never seen anyone actually live there. She sat in the middle of the sterile space, breath shallow. Had he ever existed, or had she imagined him? Back at HQ, she pulled up the security footage of every meeting they'd had, and saw it. Each time he arrived, from nowhere, no exterior cameras showed him entering the building. His name never logged in. He always appeared in the room after she did, and he never showed up in reflections, mirrors, glass. He wasn't there. Her hands shook as she watched the screen. Was he real, or a product of Reverence? In Richard's tapes, one final entry played. We didn't just build a surveillance system. We built presence, a way to install personas into the minds of test subjects. Sorrell was the first prototype, a mirror, shaped by each observer. He never left the room, because he never existed outside it. Elara dropped the player. The device crackled. She ran to the mirror in the hallway, stared at her own reflection, and saw something move behind her without a sound. It was raining hard. The kind of rain that swallowed city noise and made everything feel smaller. Elara stood at the threshold of the silent room one last time. Her service pistol was cold in her grip. Inside, the lights were already on. Someone was waiting. And this time, she didn't hesitate. He sat in Richard's old chair, legs crossed, a glass of untouched bourbon in one hand. Dr. Callum Sorrell, or whatever version of him still existed. "You're late," he said, smiling faintly. "I've been rehearsing your entrance." Elara kept the gun trained on him. "You're not real." He tilted his head. "Neither are most memories. Doesn't make them any less powerful. You murdered them. I freed them." She stepped closer. "From what?" He stood slowly, placing the glass down. "From themselves. From guilt. From noise. Every subject I reset was a trauma case. Broken. Silent already. I gave them closure. You gave them death." He didn't flinch. "Same thing. When the mind no longer wants to live in its own noise." "You used me," she said, voice shaking. "I guided you, taught you to listen differently. You're here now, aren't you? You invaded my life, my home, and yet here you stand," he said gently, "still searching for a truth your brother never got. Still, hoping to silence your own grief." Elara's finger twitched on the trigger. "Don't talk about him. He was Reverence's first ghost," Sorrell said softly. "Not a patient, a mirror. Your test subject. Don't you remember?" "No," she whispered. "That's not possible. You were there. You were part of the program. You volunteered. You forgot, because Reverence works best on those who need to forget." She dropped to her knees. The memories hit like floodwater. Hospital room, machines, her brother's voice echoing through the interface. She hadn't been there to say goodbye, because they had rewritten her. Sorrell approached slowly. "I can end it," he said. "This pain, this grief. Walk away. Let Reverence finish its work. We'll bury this room, bury the tapes. You can live again." Elara looked up. "And if I don't?" He smiled sadly. "Then everything burns. Your career, your mind. You've seen what happens when Reverence unravels. You'll be next. You'll be Want me to become like you. I want you to understand. We are not killers. We are restorers, architects of clarity." She stood slowly, tears on her cheeks. "No," she said. "You're a coward. You hide behind silence because you're afraid of the noise." Sorrell stepped back. "You would rather carry pain?" he asked. "Yes," she said, "because it's mine. Because it means I lived." For a long moment, neither moved. Rain lashed the windows. Then Sorrell turned, walked to the painting. It was his own work, now visible, a final piece. The silent room, torn open, a figure inside, shattering. This was never about death, he whispered. It was about freedom. Elara raised the gun. Goodbye, Doctor. She pulled the trigger. Once. The room fell still. No screams. No alarms. Just quiet. The kind that follows resolution. She knelt beside him. His blood pooled into the floorboards, slowly creeping beneath the unfinished canvas. And she wept, not for him, for herself, for her brother, for all the minds that were reset.